and I was the mayor of Boston when we went through Brexit.
Oh, crikey.
And so I can tell you how bad it was there.
Yes.
And I'm now in Southampton because I wanted to live in a multicultural town near the grandchildren.
Yes.
All I have to say is, interesting, you've got to look at why she's doing this. And I also remember, being a Brummie, I was around when the Rivers of Blood speech.
Yeah.
You know, and I have to say, what she's saying is very similar. If you read that speech and read what she's doing now, she's really challenging what kind of people we want into this country. And I think the point that you raised about whether she's from, brown skin or whatever,
yes.
I don't think that's irrelevant. I think you're right. I think it's a mindset. And, you've got to look over the last 12 years, since David Cameron and what he did, and with Theresa May when she sent the vans around London, and then since then with all the women who are in the Home Office there. Yes. And there's a mindset in there. When they fail on immigration, and they are failing with it, because they don't know how to deal with it, the best thing to do is just attack it. And they actually think, and I actually believe, that she's challenging for the leadership of the Conservative Party. And also, you've got to also think this week, I think she's trying to take a bit of steam off the Prime Minister anyway with the train issue. And, she's
I don't know about the second bit, but I think the first bit definitely holds true. Because Liz Truss did this as well, but using nonsense about trade deals that were rubbish and pretending they were brilliant. So you've got, in this case, possibly 1.5 eyes on the Conservative Party membership, and you can rely because of your status. So the Home Secretary gives a speech that we would probably rather ignore, but we can't because she's the Home Secretary. So it's national news. But you've touched on the politics of it, Paul, which is actually bonkers because it's an attack upon the party that's been in charge for the last 13 years.
Let's be clear. Normally, when you're involved in politics, you are community leaders. Community leaders lead communities.
Yes.
The way that what she's doing is not leading a community. She's actually trying to fragment a community.
Well, that's a very good point.
How can she make a job to be, the Home Secretary and potentially, the Prime Minister of this country if she can't lead our country?
So it's divide and rule. It's divide and rule in the simplest sense then. And the other thing it does, which I hadn't thought of until you put it like that, is, and we may talk about this later in the week, is that it sends a really unpleasant message to people living here that the Home Secretary thinks that had a hierarchy of humanity been in place last year or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, you wouldn't be here. You are not the sort of person that we want here. And that's where the emotional and intellectual confusion kicks in, because under that reading, she wouldn't be here either.
No, and sadly to say, the people, what kind of makes me ashamed is people in her own party allow her to make these statements, and they don't condemn it. And
some did actually. I think some have, but of course it's not going to be reported in the Mail, is it, or in much of the Murdoch media.
All I can say is the only thing that's got to happen, James, is that we need a general election. And hopefully the British public see through this nonsense and these bad vibes that you do. The other thing that
but they don't see through it if you throw up enough of this. This is where the Trump parallels kick in, isn't it? Because the intoxicating nature of race hate is so complete that you'll forgive absolutely anything. Indeed, that's what he meant when he said you can shoot someone on Fifth Avenue.
And also, James, the figures nationally on hate crime are going up anyway.
Well, it's hardly surprising, is it? With her doing this, it'll be lawyers next that come under attack.
It will. Unfortunately, we live in a very sad society where the people who want to lead us want to create division in our society. It's not the kind of country that I think we want.
I think you're right. And it would be quite nice to see the opposition or an opposition party making these points in rather stronger terms instead of tiptoeing around the issues as Keir Starmer does. And there it is. Thank you, Paul.
Shocked and disgusted, like most people seeing that. And obviously, once you see that other things come up online that, shows that kind of sort of prejudice. But the situation happened to my daughter.
Unpack it a little bit. Because
Sorry.
Can we just unpack it a little bit?
Sure.
Because everyone that has seen it just ends up feeling really kind of discombobulated by it.
Yeah, and I think
is it just
the child...
Is it what? What is it?
I think the child in question handled it incredibly well, but the problem is, Sangita, she shouldn't have been allowed to be in a situation where she had to take on those adult emotions and deal with that.
Yes.
She was ashamed, she was confused. It was quite easy to see that.
Yes, that's it. That's exactly it. It's that there is an adult who is handing out medals. It is obvious that that person has a duty of care towards all of those little kids. Yeah. And there is just one little girl who just on the first view of that video is being singled out for whatever reason and has to carry the weight of that humiliation. That's what it is.
Correct.
Maria. You're right.
And if it wasn't racism, then what was it?
Yeah.
If it was a medal that everybody was meant to get, and this is why I've called in, it just mirrored something that happened to my now sort of nearly 25-year-old daughter, and who's, mature, grown, has her own businesses and doing extremely well. However, she was in year 5 in school, and it was a play. And teachers were giving out, it was the end of the year as well, and teachers were giving out medals to every child just for being in year 5 and about to go into year 6. So she was, 9, 10? And everybody got a medal and a card, and she didn't get one. And we have, to this day, no reason why she didn't get it. And I remember thinking, they're going to remember her in a minute, aren't they? This is in front of the whole school. And they never did. And she came off the stage, and I went towards her, and she came towards me. And like your other caller said, she was crushed. But lucky for her, she did have me and family members, and we were able to say to her, this is not about you. That's what you have to get from this. You have to use this to strengthen you. This is not about you. This is about those adults. And school would not discuss it with me at all. We live on the cusp of Barnet and Brent. She went to a school in Barnet. And 25 years ago, much more diverse now, but not as diverse, but diverse nevertheless. However, that was her experience. And you don't want your child to sort of take that experience into the future and let it crush their spirit.
My father was captured at 14 and a half. He was a cabin boy in the Battle of the Atlantic.
Oh my God.
He spent 4.5 years in various prison camps and finally a concentration camp, liberated on his 19th birthday.
Oh my God.
And what kept him going, he told us again and again, was the thought of walking the wall and seeing that tree.
Oh my God.
So,
I'll tell you what, mate, I'm almost choking up, never mind you. Oh, Lord above. When you heard go on, sir, sorry.
So he went on to be a secondary school history teacher, and I can remember going along there with school parties in the 80s, and we always walked past there. And he explained about the mile forts and, the significance of the Great Wind Sill and all the rest of it. It was just, he was entwined with it. He really was.
When did you hear the news?
Yesterday morning. I was on a WhatsApp group of some friends, and somebody sent a media sort of snapshot of a website across.
What was your reaction?
Well, initially I thought, this has got to be a joke. And then I had a quick look on LBC and the BBC website, and of course it confirmed it. So it's just, why would you do it? It's just,
God, no.
But it's the level of planning and organisation that's got into it. Because the size of that tree.
But and I'm saying this deliberately, your family's roots are intertwined with this tree. What your dad endured, dreaming of the day he'd come back to see the tree.
Yep.
Dear God. I'm sorry, I'm doing some quick maths. Your dad would probably be in his 90s or not. Is he still with us, or he's
No, he passed away in 2016. He died at age 90, but he's recorded as being the youngest European POW. Captured 14 and a half and liberated on the 29th of April 1945.
Pardon my utter crass ignorance here. Had he lied about his age to serve, or was he...
No, Nope. You had to be 15 to join the Royal Navy. But
Right.
being 14 and a half, he couldn't wait. He didn't want to miss it. He thought it was all going to be over. So he basically badgered the local shipping companies, and you could be a cabin boy at 14. You know what teenagers are like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, actually, I better choose my words carefully. We know what teenagers were like there then. We have a teenager who's been arrested in connection with chopping down a tree now. That might tell you a little of how the world's changed.
Exactly.
All right. Did your dad ever write a book?
No. Every Man on the BBC did a documentary about him.
Did they? Oh,
yeah.
interesting.
We've got that. He obviously saw lots of horrors in the camp. He'd only been in there about 3 months, and he saw a 15-year-old Slavic boy shot right directly in front of him for just getting some soup from the Slavs weren't allowed to have the same amount of food as the Brits because of course we had German prisoners,
right.
And there was an unofficial arrangement where the guards would turn their backs and the Slavs would come and dip this mouldy bread into the British soup.
Right.
And somebody mustn't have told this new guard, and he shot this guy right in front of my dad.
Good God.
Now, this had an incredible effect on him in 1990. The British government revealed that they had shot 306 British soldiers in World War One for shell shock. We're not talking about murders or rapes or anything.
Yeah.
My dad led a 16-year campaign and finally got the pardons for them, and it was because of what he'd seen in the camp. You know, I say he'd endured all sorts.
In the last number of years, say about 4 or 5 years, there's been 70,000 deaths in Northern Ireland from drug overdoses. Also, I'm a drug user. I take a snowball, which is heroin and cocaine mixed together in a syringe. I do that about 5-6 times a day, every day for the last 2 years.
Right.
Okay, cut the story short. I've took 15 overdoses in the last 4 weeks. There was one occasion last night where I could have been dead, but thankfully somebody came into my flat and put a Loxo in my arm and bring me round again. So I think these consumption rooms are the right direction so that if I go to them, I can be looked after and medically attended if I'm ever going to be in an overdose again.
It could be the difference between life and death, David.
Yeah, I don't want to be a statistic for the national government. I want to be treated as a human being. Yeah. And also, I'm very articulate whenever I want to be. I'm smart about world affairs. So if I can help myself get better, the government has to step in and help me where there's facilities so that I can better my life and change my life and move forward in my next chapter in my life.
Have you tried that? Have you tried seeking help? Have you spoken to your doctor, your GP or anything?
I'm on the waiting list with Drug Outreach in Northern Ireland to seek a methadone program. But unfortunately, if you're on antidepressants, unfortunately, you can't get methadone. So it's either come off the antidepressants and get methadone and be depressed. So I'm in a difficult situation at the minute.
How long's the waiting list?
6 months.
Okay, so long, but not too long. And David, I'm fascinated. Tell me, everything Callum was saying, I think you heard his call just before about addicts and shame and actually addicts needing just a helping hand rather than being pushed further down and criminalised and so on. Did that resonate with you?
Yeah, I get stigmatised all the time by people that saying you're a junkie, you're a waster, you're never going to improve your life. But I will improve my life. Fair enough, I'm a drug user. I admit that, and I have no shame in that whatsoever. I do it for a reason because I suffer from loneliness, depression, mental health, you name it. I was abused as a young child growing up. I lost my parents as well, free drugs. They died. I take drugs as a coping mechanism, but that's not, I just need to stress to our government to listen to people like ourselves to get the best help for us.
Mm-hmm. And what you feel would help you most right now is being able to take those drugs in a safe place, but also getting some help with your addiction. Yeah,
counselling, which is a other good way, but there's a year's waiting list on that there. So as soon as I start the methadone program, I'm hoping to come off the antidepressants, but at the same time, I don't want to.
Does it scare you when you hear what Callum was saying about some of the stuff that's in the drugs that you might be taking?
Yeah, it does scare me, but if you're an addict, you don't care about that. All you care about is your next fix and enjoying the next fix and being happy and socialising and stuff. But half the time I take my drugs on my own. So there could be a point tonight after this call I could die. There could be a point tonight where I'll stay alive and somebody might kick the door in later on and see me dead. This is why Britain needs to wake up. The United Kingdom needs to wake up and work together in all 4 nations to set up these consumption rooms and save lives.
And if Rishi Sunak was listening to this, or whoever, Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, in a line, David, what would you ask them? What would you say to them?
I would say, think about families, think about parents' children going into the future. If we don't act now, their kids will end up dying in the hands of drug dealers, which are giving them poison instead of the real stuff.